Part 16. Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 151. Looking at Zhang He and then at his brother in Feng Qingxiu's arms, Guancheng opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. He knew Zhang He was right, but he couldn't let go of these children. Feng Qingxiu felt extremely distressed. These children were like little beasts snuggling together for warmth. If one of them was missing, the warmth would be missing. Guancheng was still kneeling on the ground, holding his head in his hands, and the ruined temple fell into an eerie silence. How silent is it? If you drop a pin on the ground, you can hear the slightest sound. In the end, it was the sound of hunger in Guancheng's stomach that broke the silence. Guancheng, you must not have eaten anything. Zhang Area quickly handed Guancheng the half of his leftover cornstarch. Feng Qingxiu hurriedly said, Area, you keep it for yourself, I still have it here. Guancheng, the Waodu is in the basket on your back. Come and get it yourself. Eat first. When you are full, let's talk about the future. Guancheng let go of his hand and raised his head, motionless. You're such a stubborn kid. Feng Qingxiu reached into her backpack with her free hand, took out a nest and handed it to him. Eat first. How can you take care of your brother when he's so hungry? Thank you. Guancheng had eaten some wild vegetable soup in the past 2 days. He was so hungry that he was starving before even eating a grain of rice. If he hadn't been worried about his younger brother, he wouldn't have been able to find his biological mother and stepfather, and he wouldn't have been able to go back to the ruined temple after being beaten. After eating half of the steamed buns, Guancheng was full. He carefully put the remaining half of the nest in the pocket of his ragged clothes. Feng Qingxiu handed over the kettle. Drink some water. I'm not thirsty. Guancheng shook his head. He was already so thirsty that smoke was coming out of his mouth when he came back. After eating the steamed buns, he became even thirstier. However, he was afraid that he would dirty the kettle, so he planned to go to the river to get a few sips of water. Drink. Take it, drink it. How could Feng Qingxiu not understand his thoughts? He forced the kettle into his arms. Guancheng's eyes turned red. He held the water bottle and took a few sips. Feng Qingxiu saw a few broken bowls in the ruined temple, and asked Guancheng to clean a bowl with only a small opening. When she came back, she poured water from the kettle, took out a small half of a white-faced steamed bun from the basket on her back, and tore it into pieces. Soak it thoroughly and feed it to Guanyu, who has been taking medicine for a while. A very hungry child, even if he is not awake, his mouth will comply with the needs of his body and swallow in large gulps. In fact, it would be best to eat porridge, but the current situation does not allow it. Even the white steamed buns soaked in water were enough to make everyone present envious, and they couldn't help but smash their mouths. They have only heard of white-faced steamed buns but have never seen them before. After a while, Guan Yu ate all the white steamed buns soaked in water. There was something in his stomach, which relieved the spasm of his stomach. His brows relaxed and he slept more soundly. Zhang He patted Guancheng's shoulder hard. Guancheng, why are you hesitating? Stop hesitating. It can be seen that Feng Qingxiu, who even makes white-faced steamed buns, treats Guancheng and Guanyu sincerely. In this era, many parents cannot do this. Zhang He envied Guancheng, but he was also happy for Guancheng. He was happy that his good friend could finally have a normal home and no longer had to wander outside and live a life worse than a pig or a dog. Guancheng looked back at him and whispered, I can't bear to leave you, Zhang He. If I leave, you will be the only one left. Arya is a girl after all. Can you take care of the remaining children by yourself? Aren't you just leading everyone to beg for food? I can take care of it, Zhang He said nonchalantly. Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 152. Don't make it so easy. Everyone is having a hard time. Where can a beggar go without being beaten and chased? After listening to Guanchen's words, Zhang He sneered, "Fart. People can't live anymore. How many families have dogs? Even the dog owners have already skinned and cramped the dogs and cooked them to fill their stomachs. Isn't it just looking at people that we beg for? Are you being treated as a guest? Don't be ridiculous. Every time we visit, it means that they have lost part of their rations. It's weird to welcome us." Having said this, Zhang He said sternly, "Guancheng, don't worry. Winter is hard, isn't it spring? In spring, the mountains and plains are covered with weeds, and the poplars and willows have sprouted. As long as you have hands and feet, you won't let it go starve yourself to death." When Guancheng and Zhang He were talking, Feng Qingxiu remained silent. Because she knew clearly that she sympathized with these children, but she could not take them all back. There would be nowhere to place them, and she could not provide food and clothing for so many people. It was too eye-catching. Everyone doesn't have enough to eat, but I am feeding so many people by myself. Even a blind person can notice the fishiness in this. The more you experience, the more you understand how precious food is. Feng Qingxiu once again made up her mind. After the famine years passed and the food production and supply were eased, she would slowly reduce the food supply to her family and friends. She would take out as little fine grain as possible in order to fill her stomach. Just work hard and you can always earn back part of your rations, which reduces the consumption of space materials. Soon, the conversation between Guancheng and Zhang He came to an end. Guancheng took his brother and left with Feng Qingxiu. The broken temple would always open its door to their brothers and they could come back at any time. The words were spoken by Zhang He. Feng Qingxiu smiled. The two children in front of her were really thoughtful. Zhang He actually said this to her. If life goes well in Guancheng and Guanyu, it would be the best. If she doesn't get good care, then leave there and go back to the ruined temple. Don't worry Zhang He, if I can't feed Guancheng and Guanyu, I won't come to pick them up. Staring at Zhang He, this seemingly cold-hearted but actually soft-hearted young man, I took Guancheng and Guanyu away. No, I will forget you children. I will definitely come back to see you when I am able. Zhang He waved his arms in the air a few times. We are all happy for Guancheng and Guanyu to live a good life. Who is not tightening their belts now? You don't have to worry about us. For this reason, enough is enough. Guancheng was carrying Feng Qingxiu's backpack, while Feng Qingxiu was holding Guanyu. The two left under the eyes of everyone. After walking for a while and looking back, they could still see children of all sizes at the entrance of the ruined temple. Seeing them turn around, Zhang Arya and several children waved vigorously. When they arrived at Wanglu Brigade in the evening, Lu's father and brothers Lu Tianwan had been waiting for them. When they saw Guancheng and Guanyu, they didn't have time to talk about what had happened over the years, so they boiled 2 pots of hot water for him and Guanyu to take a bath. Guancheng washed it himself, but Feng Qingxiu washed Guanyu. The child woke up on the way, and after waking up, he hugged Feng Qingxiu and never let go. Taking a bath when you have a fever can actually help cool you down. The clothes the two brothers wore belonged to Lu Tianjun and Lu Tianzi. They were all washed clean, but they looked empty on their bodies. Father Lu cooked a pot of brown rice porridge and served it. Eat first, and then talk when you're full. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 153. Guancheng was extremely surprised. The Lu family's life was so good that they could have dinner. And it's not rice soup where you can see people in it, it's thick rice porridge, very thick, exuding a mouth-watering fragrance. On the square dining table were a plate of pickles and a plate of cut salted duck eggs, the yolks almost dripping with oil. Guan Yu's eyes suddenly lit up like stars. He ate something while he was sleeping, and his brother told him when he woke up, but he couldn't taste it. Now he saw the fragrant rice porridge and fragrant salted duck eggs, and he was so greedy that his saliva almost flowed out. Father Lu felt a pain in his heart. The descendants of the Guan family, who were once so proud that everyone in the city had been reduced to this, with no clothes on their bodies and no food to eat, made him feel like a rabbit had died and a fox was saddened by its own kind. He filled a bowl of porridge and handed it to him first. To Guan Cheng, he handed him half a salted duck egg, and asked Tianjun to get him a multi-grain pancake. "Akin, let's eat. You'll be welcome when you get home." "Thank you, Grandpa Lu, I can't finish it." Guan Cheng pushed back the pancakes. Only after Father Lu and Feng Qingxiu both picked up their rice bowls, did he pick up the bowl in front of him. The slightest trace of steam coming out of the bowl covered his expression. Feng Qingxiu said hurriedly, "Both Guan Cheng brothers have lost their intestines due to hunger. Just drink porridge. Drinking porridge nourishes the stomach." "Yes, I forgot. Let's drink porridge for a few days to nourish our stomach. Let's eat more." After Lu's father finished speaking, he greeted Guan Cheng. Feng Qingxiu first fed Guan Yu to drink half a bowl of warm porridge. In a blink of an eye, he saw Guan Cheng holding half a salted duck egg, sipping the porridge from the bowl in small sips, with a cherishing attitude that was almost pious. His posture was very standard, and he clearly had etiquette engraved in his bones. It had not changed at all because of living on the streets these years. After eating, Lu Tianjun was about to wash the dishes, and Guan Cheng was the first to pick up the stacked bowls. "Akin is so diligent. I don't know how much less housework I can do with you by my side in the future," Father Lu sighed lowly. He did not stop Guan Cheng, but motioned for Lu Tianjun to help. "If you stop him, he will feel like a guest, which will not be conducive to future relationships." When the two cousins came back from washing the dishes, Lu Zhang asked Guan Cheng to sit down in front of him. "Akin, I have heard what Aunt Shui said about you over there. You have not lost the character of the Guan family. You value love and righteousness. You are worthy of being a descendant of the Guan family. I am very proud of you and pride." Guan Cheng said calmly, "It's just to survive. Keeping their brother alive is their only hope, it's that simple." Father Lu nodded, "Yeah, it's better to die than to live. Only when you are alive can you have hope. If you die, it will be over. No matter how big your ambitions were during your lifetime, they will never be realized. Akin, you don't mind that the cow sheet is simple. Just live in peace, with me and your two cousins having a meal, and you and your brother having a meal. We don't have wealth, but with your uncle and Aunt Shui here, our chance of survival is small. Much bigger than others." Guan Cheng stood up and saluted Father Lu and Feng Qingxiu solemnly, thank you, Grandpa Lu, thank you Aunt Shui. I can't repay you two for your great kindness now. When I grow up, I will repay you well." "What does the family say about repayment?" "They didn't take you here for the purpose of repaying you when you grow up." After listening to Feng Qingxiu's words, Guan Cheng finally showed a smile on his still bruised face, nodded and said, "Yes, I will never mention it again in the future. He will remember it in his heart, forever and ever." Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 154. Next, when talking about the orphans in the ruined temple, Feng Qingxiu's pity was beyond words. In this world, one person's ability is very limited. No one can provide food and drink for so many children. Others can't do it, and I can't do it either. She had to ensure her own safety first, and then help others. People who need help. Guan Cheng's eyes darkened, but he understood Feng Qingxiu very well. Many people can't support themselves. What's more, there are several young and old in the Lu family, plus my own brothers. It's a blessing to be able to fill their stomachs in the future. How can you expect a dozen children to live a life of food and drink? Father Lu admired Guanchen's great love and righteousness. After thinking about it, he suddenly had an idea. What's the idea? Feng Qingxiu, Guanchen, and Lu Tianjun all asked in unison. Isn't there a mountain forest near our place? There are more than a dozen hills, large and small, connected together. Grandpa Lu, what happened to the forest? Guancheng thought about it and could indeed see a hilltop to the west of the cowshed. According to the eyesight he had developed from often going out to beg for food, it was about 20 or 30 miles away from the cowshed. Father Lu smiled and said, there are air raid shelters in that mountain. Dug out. Dug out. Dug out. Feng Qingxiu, Lu Tianjun, and Guancheng's voices were not uniform this time, but their words were exactly the same, with a questioning tone, and their eyes were fixed on Father Lu. Yes, air raid shelters. Father Lu exhaled slowly and continued, during the war, there were frequent air raids for a period of time. Our Lu family funded and built the air raid shelters. At that time, we wanted to give our family a way out for the tenants. Now the living conditions in Wanglu are better than in other places. Every household has its own house and is used to living in groups. Few people want to live alone, so those air raid shelters are empty. There was a hint of joy on Feng Qingxiu's face. You mean to let those children move to the air raid shelter? First, it is easy to find food in the mountains, and second, it is close to us, so we can usually take care of them. Kahu to the south of Zishan Mountain, it is about 7 or 8 miles away. Father Lu smiled and nodded, that's what he thought. Since Guancheng couldn't let go of the group of children who depended on each other, he had to find a way to accommodate them. The air raid shelter was the best place. It was not far or close to them, so it wouldn't affect his family's life, and he could take care of them nearby. Do you know there are many people in the air raid shelter? Guancheng was particularly concerned when Feng Qingxiu asked. Father Lu shook his head and said, there are many people who know, so what? The air raid shelters are now owned by the state, not privately owned. No one lives in them, so they remain empty. Although human nature is very complex, we will not really treat a group of homeless people like drive away the children who can't be returned and don't let them stay in that place. When the time comes, I'll tell your uncle, and if he speaks, no one will have any objections. Feng Qingxiu nodded and suddenly asked, is it dangerous to live in the mountains? No, what's the danger? How many trees are there in the surrounding mountains now? They were all cut down during the steel-making industry. In the past 2 years, famine has caused every family to have enough to eat, and those mountains have been cut down. A few layers of skin have fallen off. Animals are very capable of reproducing. There may be some pheasants, rabbits, and ducks occasionally in the deep mountains and old forests, but they are definitely not many. Who wouldn't keep an eye on them if they are large? Ajong went there not long ago and managed to catch them with great difficulty. There are no skinny prey, no big beasts like wild boars. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 155. Hearing what Father Lu said, Feng Qingxiu felt relieved. Guancheng jumped up happily, and Guan Yu's pale and red cheeks also showed a smile. I'll go back tomorrow and bring Zhang He and the others over. He stayed in the Guandi temple. Living here, he was beyond the reach of his good friends, but it was different when he lived in the Zishan air raid shelter. They were close and could easily take care of each other. Father Lu said, why are you panicking? Tianjun won't have class tomorrow, so you two brothers will go to the air raid shelter to clean it first. Tianjun knows the location of the air raid shelter. As for you, know the way, and then get some hay and dead vines to send inside to pave it. It's thicker. I have an old mattress at home. I can't let the children sleep on the ground. It's colder in the mountains. What should I do if it gets frozen? When I find the way, I will go too. Uncle Lu is very thoughtful. The second thing is to get some food for them first. They are all children and they can't just eat wild vegetables. Feng Qingxiu thought to herself and looked for an opportunity to ask Chen Ming for help. Exchanging several hundred kilograms of fine grains for coarse grains is a loss. For her, whole grains are unpalatable and difficult to swallow, but for those children, they are life-saving. Of course there are coarse grains in the space, but just save what you can. Although the fine grains are delicious, the quantity is not as good as the coarse grains in exchange, which can save many people. Father Lu nodded slightly. We have some dried sweet potato seeds stored at home. You two brothers organized the air raid shelter, went back to pick up the people and moved in directly. Then they sent the dried sweet potatoes to them, not much, half a sack, and asked them to live with them. Eat them together with wild vegetables. There are mountains and water there. Whether they can survive on the mountains and the water in the future depends on their own abilities. My uncle is not at home these days. When he and my wife come back, I beg my uncle to settle down a household for those children. When the farming is busy, I will ask the half-year-old children to help me and earn 2 work points to make ends meet. This is the only thing Feng Qingxiu can do to help. As far as she knows, apart from the strict household registration in cities and towns, the rural areas are more chaotic and have looser management. Wang Zhenkuo is the captain and party secretary, so he can definitely help. The soil quality here is good and the crop yields are high. I wish there were more people working during the harvest. Your idea is completely feasible. Of course, you have to ask your uncle to confirm the household registration of Akan and Au in the name of distant relatives. Besides, in normal times, when they dig wild vegetables, they can cut pig grass and then hand it over to the brigade to feed the pigs and cattle. 5 pounds of grass is a work point, and the strength is great. Even if the work points earned after autumn are not enough to fill the stomach, it will be half full. Can survive. Half a year's worth of vegetables and half a year's food. If you don't have enough to eat, you won't starve to death. Yes, our Kahua brigade is responsible for chopping wood, mowing grass, herding cattle, digging rivers, etc. As long as you work for the brigade, you can get work points, but the work points are not as good as those of strong laborers. Feng Qingxiu continued. I will live in the air raid shelter temporarily and gradually gain acceptance from the people in the production team. When the time comes, I will ask my uncle to buy a homestead to build a house. We will not be short of money, so it will last for a long time. Tears welled up in Guancheng's eyes, and he choked and said, Enough, this is enough, this is enough. For kids like them, this is the best way out. Isn't it because they have to beg for food because they are homeless and do not have a household registration? Urban residents are issued grains according to their household registration. Even if they are not working, they still have a certain standard of grain rations. One more resident will add a burden to the country. In the countryside, work points are relied on, and grain output is low. The villagers don't get enough points, so how can we take them in to share our rations? Father Lu and Feng Qingxiu arranged accommodation and livelihood for them. Such kindness could not be repaid in a few lifetimes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 156. After receiving such news, Zhang He jumped up on the spot and happily patted Guancheng on the shoulder, completely without the coldness before. Guancheng, we have really benefited from your favor. What a blessing. We homeless children are all poor working people. As long as we have a household registration, we are all poor peasants. If there is a place willing to take us, then it is a production brigade with high grain output. As long as we are not lazy, we will definitely be able to support ourselves if we get bigger. Zhang Area understood and was stunned for a long time. The other children were not so smart and were young. Seeing them happy, they also started laughing silly. They felt so happy to see Guancheng again after a few days apart. Don't be too happy too early. Aunt Chue's uncle is not at home, and I don't know if the household registration matter will be finalized in the end. Guancheng said this, but his face was full of smiles. Zhang He smiled and said, no matter whether it succeeds or not, there is always a glimmer of hope, right? Making a decisive decision, Zhang He directed everyone to pack up their belongings and leave Guandi Temple. Their possessions were very simple, including dog-beating sticks, broken pots, and porcelain bowls. They tied all the dry grass and firewood in the temple into bundles and tied them with twisted hemp ropes and carried them firmly on their bodies. Leaving in a mighty way, arriving in Zishan in a mighty way. Some of the air raid shelters are very deep, some are very shallow, some have a deep well in them, and some have toilets. The walls are covered with moss, but each air raid shelter has ventilation facilities. After all, if you want to avoid air raids, you can move there. Here, everyone needs a breath of fresh air. There are also a few specially built stone chambers in the air raid shelters. Guancheng and Lu Tianjun sorted out the 2 stone chambers, which were covered with thick withered grass. The boys will live in one room, and the girls will live in another room. The old mattress will be spread under the girls. As soon as Guancheng finished speaking, Feng Qingxiu's voice came in from outside, I still have an old mattress here, bring it over for you to use. When I have time and materials, I will find a way to make quilts for you and send them over used in winter. Aunt Chue, you're here, Guancheng welcomed her in, and at the same time took the old mattress she carried and the basket under the mattress. When Feng Qingxiu saw that there were many children, she showed a very pleased smile on her face, and said to Guancheng and Zhang He, I have asked someone to find a way to get you some coarse grains like bean dregs and bean cakes. If you are lucky, I'll get some sweet potato noodles or something and I'll deliver them to you as soon as I get them. The quantity may not be large, so don't be dissatisfied. Zhang He hurriedly said, I don't mind, Aunt Chue, I call you the same as Guancheng, if you are willing to give us a piece of bean dregs cake when we beg for food, you are a good person. What you eat doesn't fill your stomach, as long as you don't starve to death. In the past 2 years, when they went out to beg for food, they saw many people who were so hungry that they ate guanyin soil. In the end, they couldn't poop and suffocated to death. Feng Qingxiu took out a large copper pot with bumps on the surface from her backpack, I've seen it. There is a well in an air raid shelter and a stream outside. You can fill it with water and boil it before drinking. This will help don't get sick. I'll try to find a way to get you a pot for cooking. A home should feel like a home. Hearing the last sentence, Guancheng, Zhang He, and Zhang Area had sour noses and burst into tears. Home, yes, home, this is their home, the home where they depend on each other. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 157. This large copper kettle was the one I bought from a scrapyard with money. It is a cylindrical shape that is lit directly from the bottom without setting up a stove. Specifically, it should be called a tea stove. She had an iron pot for boiling water at home, so she brought copper pots to the children, as well as earthen pots that she used before there were no pots at home. She brought another machete and gave it to Zhang He for self-defense. Even if there are few large beasts in the mountains, precautions must be taken in advance to avoid being in a hurry when a crisis occurs. Spring has returned to the earth, and the weather is getting warmer, but it is still cold in the morning and evening. You can't take off your winter clothes in a hurry, otherwise there will be no spring covering up the autumn frost, so Feng Qingxiu brought them some old clothes and shoes, some of which were bought from second-hand counters. Some of them were bought with a little grain on the black market. Except for the cotton-padded clothes and shoes, everything else was washed, boiled in boiling water and dried in the sun. The mountain road is rugged and full of thorns. It is easy to get pricked and bloody when walking barefoot. Feng Qingxiu noticed this when she was finding the way. She remembered that most of the children she saw in the ruined temple were barefoot, and even those with shoes were wearing rotten straw sandals, so she made preparations in advance. When the children heard that it was given to them, they cheered and were indescribably excited. Seeing the younger children putting on their clothes and shoes and jumping up and down on the spot, Zhang He turned sideways and wiped his eyes. When he turned back, his eye circles were a little red, but his eyes were firmer than ever. Before leaving, Feng Qingxiu called Zhang He aside again and handed him a patched cloth bag. "Aunt Chue, is this?" His hand was heavy, and Zhang He's heart suddenly surged with speculation that even he couldn't believe. "I brought you some wheat bran mixed with cornmeal from home. It's not much, just about 10 kilograms. From now on, when making wild vegetable soup, use water and some wheat bran in the pot. Don't just drink plain vegetable soup," Feng Qingxiu finally said. "Could not bear." Zhang He hugged the cloth bag and bent down deeply. "Thank you," he kept it in his heart. After going down the mountain, before parting ways with Guancheng, Feng Qingxiu took the empty basket handed by Guancheng and carried it behind her back, saying to him, "Go back and tell Uncle Lu that my uncle, De Kuizi, is back and will ask someone to go to the grassland who sent me a message. Remember, Aunt Chue." Feng Qingxiu watched him walk towards the Wanglu brigade, then turned back to Kahua. At a glance, Wang Jiao has been missing for many days, and Wang Zhenqiu and Miao Fengqin have been quietly searching outside. She met her aunt before returning home on the day she took Guancheng Guanyu, and learned that her 3 cousins from her uncle's family had also gone out secretly, just to find Wang Jiao, but they came back with nothing, describing her brothers as headless flies. Grandma's house didn't find her, her aunt didn't pick her up, and other relatives' houses also searched but couldn't find her. They didn't know where to look for Wang Jiao. Putting aside Wang Jiao's coveting of Lu Zhang, the soft-hearted and kind-hearted Feng Qingxiu didn't want anything unexpected to happen to her. If there is something wrong with Wang Jiao, even if the uncle won't say anything, the eldest sister will definitely be angry with herself. After all, Wang Jiao ran away from home because she wanted to marry Lu Zhang but was unwilling to marry Zhang Yu. It's not that she thinks bad things about people, it's that she understands the complexity of people too well. When it comes to their own children, every parent is reluctant to blame his own children and will only vent his anger on others, even if the fault lies with his own children and not others. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 158. The matter with the Guandi temple children came to an end, and Feng Qingxiu and her sister joined the army of digging wild vegetables and pulling leaves and buds. With the addition of these children, Feng Qingxiu finally felt nervous about food. She truly saw what locust crossing was like. Wherever the folks from the Kahua brigade went, the land was cut clean. Not to mention wild vegetables, there were not even a few weeds left. They could earn work points by handing in 5 pounds of grass per centimeter, and Wanglu brigade the regulations are the same. However, the weeds are not burned out, and they grow again when the spring breeze blows. The vitality of wild vegetables and weeds is very tenacious. New ones will appear after a few days after the ground is clean, and soon it will be green again. Wild vegetables are not tasty, and leaves and shoots are even worse. Feng Qingxiu followed the trend and picked up half a basket of willow buds, washed them, blanched them in boiling water, took them out to dry, briefly mixed them with oil and salt, and served them to the table. Feng Qingyun wrinkled as soon as he took a bite. Face. It's so bitter. Sister, Feng Qingyun wanted to swallow but didn't want to, and looked at Feng Qingxiu longingly. Feng Qingxiu took a bite, and it was indeed bitter and astringent. My own family uses oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar to season it so it tastes so good. Others boil it in water and eat it. You can imagine the bitterness. But she still insisted on swallowing it, and said to Feng Qingyun seriously, "So, you have forgotten the pain of not being able to eat after only a few good days? When you were a child, how often did you eat wild vegetables and willow buds that were not very delicious? Sometimes we can't even eat. It's a lean period now, and even I can't get food as much as I can in late autumn and early winter, so we have to save some food." Feng Qingyun held the luya that had not yet been swallowed in her mouth, biting her lower lip with her teeth, looking at her stern-looking sister to decide whether to cry or not. "Sister." Feng Qingyun's voice was choked. "So." Feng Qingxiu put her soft hand on top of her head, and her voice became much softer. "Didn't I tell you about Brother Guancheng and Brother Guanyu? Orphans like them begging for food are too much. Too much. Have you forgotten that we also relied on begging to fill our stomachs after we were kicked out of the house? People can't forget the hardships in the past when we have a good life. When we first started digging wild vegetables, you were so good and reminded me to dig more. The wild vegetables were dried and stored, did you forget?" "I haven't forgotten, sister." Feng Qingyun swallowed the luya in her mouth, and held her sister's skirt with the hand that wasn't holding chopsticks. "I just lived a good life with sister for too long, and I couldn't swallow it for a while. I can eat, I can eat." As she spoke, she lowered her head and ate the willow sprouts and the dried sweet potato porridge in the bowl. Compared to people who have nothing to eat, she is so lucky to have a good sister. Later, Chen Ming and Su Aiguo hauled hundreds of kilograms of coarse grains to the air raid shelter in Zishan. Feng Qingxiu, who had received the news in advance, specially brought Feng Qingyun there and let her watch the hundreds of kilograms of coarse grains unloaded, which were all dried bean dregs, sweet potato residue and chopped bean cakes. What can really be called food is only half a sack of dried sweet potatoes and half a bag of sweet potato noodles. When my younger siblings asked me to get these things, I knew they were for saving people. Chen Ming smoked a cigarette. The cigarette was given by Feng Qingxiu as a white-faced gift during the Chinese New Year. It was given by the boss, but he never wanted to smoke it. He said seriously to Zhang He, "Boy, I picked them out for you from the breeding farm. They are not delicious either. Don't feel you owe me any favors." Chen Ming and Su Aiguo, who had been soldiers, cherished these homeless orphans more than ordinary people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 159. If Chen Ming says he doesn't owe favors, does that mean he really doesn't? Zhang He didn't think so. Without a certain identity and connections, it would be impossible to obtain these hundreds of kilograms of life-saving food. Zhang He didn't say anything, but he kept this kindness in his heart. The warmth he hadn't felt in more than 10 years came so violently and quickly during this period that he didn't know how to describe his feelings. Chen Ming and Su Aiguo are both busy people, so they didn't stay long after things were delivered. Feng Qingxiu took her sister down the mountain with them, and said to Zhang He, who was sending them down the mountain, "Go back quickly, don't send them off, you have to handle the affairs of those brothers and sisters personally as the eldest brother." "Okay, Aunt Chue, Uncle Chen, and Uncle Patriot, please go slowly." Zhang He waved his hand and watched them go away before going back. Walking at the foot of the mountain, Feng Qingxiu said to Chen Ming and Su Aiguo, "Brother Chen, patriotic brothers, thank you this time." "You're welcome, what are you thanking for? We all have a hard time, we're just helping each other." Chen Ming didn't want to take credit. "The leaders in the farm often ask me to get some feed grains in exchange for some food for people to eat. We have a very good relationship with me. He said it was for saving people, but he picked out these edible things for me without saying a word and didn't ask for anything. That's what I said. If I have something in my hand tomorrow, I have to go, thank you, Feng Qingxiu said. Chen Ming nodded, that's right. Favors come and go, and if you move around frequently, the relationship will be better. You don't have to be shy to ask for help. Don't worry, you have me, it will take a long time, don't be in a hurry. For a while. Feng Qingxiu pursed her lips and smiled, her dimples looming. On the way home, Feng Qingyun, who had been silent all the time, asked what feed grain was. In fact, Feng Qingxiu didn't know for sure. She thought for a while and said, maybe it's food for feeding pigs and livestock. I remember that the country issued tasks, and our brigade also has 2 task pigs. In order to raise the task pigs, the fattening is handed over to the state, and in order to ensure that the cattle, horses, mules, and other animals are strong enough to work, the brigade specially allocated a sum of grain, which may be feed grain. These days, animals are living better than people. She heard the neighbors say this more than once. When she got home and asked Feng Xuanzi, her explanation to her sister was indeed correct. Feng Xuanzi suddenly stopped her when she was about to leave, the weather is getting warmer. People can't be lazy. They have to work when it's time. I plan to work in 2 groups. One group will pull weeds in the field, and the other will work. I'm going to dig the river and open the canal. It takes a lot of labor, but you need people to cook. Xiaoxiu, what do you think if I arrange this job for you? Compared with the work of weeding in the fields, cooking is much easier. Many women are staring at this Jiao Zone eagerly. Feng Qingxiu said hurriedly, I will obey the uncle's arrangements. Okay, we'll set off tomorrow. You make preparations. It's not far away. We'll leave at 4 in the morning and come back when it gets dark at night. Feng Xuanzi showed a smile on his face. If it weren't for Feng Qingxiu's huge favor, the job of cooking is simply not her turn. Digging rivers and canals should be a winter job, but winter is extremely cold. The water and soil are frozen like iron. No matter how hard you dig, you can't dig it. Several iron rods are broken. Several party secretaries from the production brigade gather together. We spent half a day together, waiting for spring to warm up before finishing the work before the busy farming season, so we needed to leave early and come back late, and we needed to catch up on work. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 160. Cooking is not easy at all. On the first day of work, Feng Qingxiu had these words in her mind. The strong laborers from 7 or 8 production brigades came out to work, and the work was crowded. Although they only had to cook for their own production brigades, and there were 2 women with them, the workload was still quite large. From the Kahua brigade came Feng Qingxiu and Feng Xuanxuan's wife. In addition, Feng Qingxiu brought her sister with her. She originally wanted to send Feng Qingyun to school, but she was too young and the school refused to accept her. Moreover, the primary school in Kahua brigade was disbanded. If she wanted to go to school, she had to walk to Wanglu brigade where living conditions were better. While the strong laborers were working, they had to dig wild vegetables, pull leaves and buds, wash and prepare them, and then come back to make vegetable soup for them to eat. When Feng Qingxiu was digging wild vegetables, she noticed the labor scene on the riverbed. Some people had their legs and feet immersed in the water. The excavated soil was put into large wicker baskets. Then some people carried the wicker baskets filled with soil to the embankment. Used to build embankments. Small carts cannot be used here, so they all rely on human power, carried on the shoulders, carried with a pole, or carried by 2 people together. When she was a child, she heard her grandparents say that a basket containing soil could hold 600 to 700 kilograms of soil, and a larger basket could hold 1,000 kilograms. Sometimes it was all carried on the shoulders, and it took almost the same time to dig rivers and canals. It's winter all year, and this is the only time of the year when there is no busy farming. Many people are exhausted from working in icy water, and suffer from long-term illnesses in their later years. However, many prime-age laborers are willing to work. The first is to record full work points, which is 10 work points a day. The second is to save the family's food rations. Because the work is strenuous, the boss is not strict about food, and each person has 2 three-faced rolls per meal. Sweet potato noodles, sorghum noodles, and black noodles are mixed together. The steamed rolls are dark and taste better than the coarse grains usually eaten at home. Women who cook eat half and hide the other. Many strong laborers eat and leave one behind, carrying it in their arms and saying to take it home, either for the elderly, or for their wives and children. People from the Wanglu brigade also came to work. Seeing Wang Zhenqiu, Feng Qingxiu hurriedly ran to him. "Uncle, are you back? The last few times I went to Wanglu, you and De Guza were not at home. I asked my aunt, Auntie said you went to visit relatives. She didn't say anything about Wang Jiao running away from home, nor did she ask if Wang Jiao had been found again." Wang Zhenqiu and Miao Fengqin's family all hid the fact that Wang Jiao ran away from home, so she certainly wouldn't get into trouble. "Snow? Are you here?" Yes, you can't just sit back and have nothing, you have to work to earn points." Wang Zhenqiu seemed particularly happy to see his niece. "Take your cousin to visit relatives. The road is quite long, and the trip back and forth is delayed some time." Upon hearing that Wang Jiao was back, Feng Qingxiu felt relieved and a smile appeared on her face. "How are you and your cousin? Traveling far away to visit relatives is tiring. Your eldest sister is fine, but your cousin has trouble walking and fell down. She has completely forgotten what happened in the past 6 months. So, your eldest sister stays at home to take care of her." Having said this, Wang Zhenqiu breathed a sigh of relief. In the past 6 months, his daughter has been so noisy that his head hurts, he got injured and forgot some things, and lost things he took from home. She is no longer so eccentric, although she is still as willful as when she was a child, and she gets angry when she is unhappy. He lost his temper, but didn't remember that he wanted to marry Lu Jiang. When he passed by the bullpen, he despised the Lu family's poor status and said that he shouldn't secretly help the Lu family.